Good morning, everybody. Sean Carlson from Blackjack 98 Enterprises. It is 10:45 in the morning on Saturday, September 21st, and the machine you see behind me is our next project. So let's get a look at it. What we have here is a Stihl FS76 that a customer had brought to me from out of town. We're gonna do a pan of everything on it, just so you all know what it is that I am working at. It's got wide handlebars on it, and as you've noticed, it's a straight shaft. Straight shaft means that you can have more than one attachment on the head. And this is a wide head. Even has markings where the line turns. If there was no markings, you would have to look for the cutter, which is this. And what the hell is this? That looks like a plastic freaking blade. What the hell? Okay, this is plastic. I've never seen a plastic blade like that before, but that is so crap. Oh my gosh. Alright. We've got ourselves a big head. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, what I do is complete engine teardown and rebuilds. And the reason why I do that is because it will find any other outlying issue that there could be with the engine, not necessarily what the customer wants or what the customer says that they want done or that they see done, because you never know what else there could be, another outlying issue, and I could find it. If you ever take your machine to a shop and they nickel and dime you because you have to keep on bringing it back, that's exactly why, because they're only fixing one thing at a time that you tell them to, which I think is crap. With me, I fixed the entire engine on a weed whacker, rebuild it, strip it right down to the piston and cylinder if I need to strip it down to the piston and cylinder, as well as this one too. What we're going to do, exactly that, rebuild the engine. Take the shaft off. We're going to grease the rod inside. We're going to grease the throttle cable. We're going to disassemble the head completely. We're going to take this gearbox off of the shaft. We're going to look inside for the oil, the grease. We're going to remove the oil and the grease, and we're going to take this off completely. We're going to look inside for any wear and tear. And I'm going to look online for a metal freaking cutter, because that is absolutely freaking crap. Or if I have to go and make one, I could do that. But this will also be cleaned up too. Cleaned. When it comes to this handlebar onto the shaft, I do not need to do anything with that. So this is going to stay onto here. This will be taken down so we can analyze this, and we will test the wiring for the on-off switch for conductivity. And to be honest with you, he started it for me last night, and I watched him. He put it in choke, he started it, he was able to rev it up, and then it was working. And then he shut it off, and it stopped. So now we know the throttle works, the on-off switch works, and which means it fires up. What that tells me is because he fired up, there's nothing wrong with the cylinder and the piston going up and down. He did mention something about the compression and says that it starts to slow down after he starts using it, so he figures that it could be a carburetor issue. I don't know, but in my experience of taking things apart with a carburetor issue, it's never just a carburetor issue, it's something else, like an air filter, fuel flow, wrong fuel mix. This here is a 50-to-1 Stihl. Okay, so I got my Timmies, I got my music. It's 10:45. It's not 1 o'clock p.m. yet. 1 o'clock p.m. I start getting into the rum. These babies right there. Until then, we're gonna start taking this thing apart. In the previous video that I did with an FS76, FS55, a lot of people wanted to know, where does this screw go? Where does that screw go? What does that look like? I didn't see you take that out. Oh my gosh, I'm taking this apart. Where does that screw? What does that look like? Oh gee whiz. So in this video it's going to be just a little bit longer because now I have to show everybody what the screw looks like, where it comes out of. Okay? Everybody wants to know all the fine details when they're working on their engine, which is why they watch my videos. And I'm happy to do that for you. If you really want to know, I will frickin' tell you. So, here we go. Let's start off by taking off the air filter cover. Okay, ooh, that air filter looks a bit dirty. Looks clean on one side, dirty on the other. Ooh, just like a prostitute on Hastings. I'd spend some good money on that. Okay, so, oh, looks like we got bolts that we gotta take this off. And to get this cover off, we need a star. Let's see, this one here, will this work? Okay, what's this? Oh, darn it, it doesn't tell me, does it? Oh shit, maybe it's a T25, but there's one right there, and there's one right there, and it looks to me that's what's needed to take this top cover off. Yeah, so I'll just take those two off and this will come off. Alright, after taking those two bolts out, this one here was in the front, and we're gonna look at it. Okay, this is a fine thread bolt, which is a T25, I'm assuming, and it's fine threads. I just want everybody to know something factual that I found out in the many times that I taken weed whackers apart. Anytime that you're dealing with fine threads, they are definitely attached to the actual engine, the body, the block. Okay, this is holding a plastic piece into the block, and the block will always have fine threads on it. So when you see fine threads, that means it's attached to something metal. Okay, if there's coarse threads, it is holding one piece of plastic to the other piece of plastic. That's the only reason why you would have coarse threads. Fine threads have to do with the block. And can I take this off now? I can't really do three things with two hands. Two things with one hand, but I'm getting it. Here we go. Ooh, oh, look at that. It's like, looks like crap. Look at their little whore, which I don't mind fixing up and cleaning. I'm gonna put it right there. Holy crap, look at this. Lot of gunk, lot of junk. And I can tell this has never been cleaned before, taken apart before. I don't know how old this is, but this will definitely have to be cleaned up. The primer bulb looks pretty good. Let's press the primer bulb. Ooh, look at that. See the bubble in there? You see the bubble? Yeah, so upon looking at this bubble, after I pressed it, that's exactly what a primer bulb should look like when you press it. That means there is no air leaks coming from the fuel tank going into the carburetor. Those two fuel lines that are dirty as hell, they're good. They're tight. This is a tight connection. There's no air going into the primer bulb when you press it, and it pops up nicely. So we're still going to take the carburetor apart and disassemble it anyways, just in case the carburetor has something to do with the reason why it's running low on the customer when he uses it. And so now those two bolts, nuts right there, once I take those out, the bolt right there is a long one. So it's holding in this piece, it's holding in the carburetor, it's holding probably this piece here to the block. And I'm pretty sure if I was to, it's been a while since I did this, but those two bolts are separate, which come out after the carburetor comes out. And then the inside piece here is locked into the block. So that is what we will be looking at after I get those two nuts taken out. But let's look at the choke. The choke. This is the choke. This is choke, run. Choke, run. Okay? choke, run, choke, run. This is a air filter mounted choke. Choke means that you are restricting the air going into the cylinder for it to fire up, and pure fuel is going into the cylinder, which is why it starts up just a little bit, because it's got nothing but fuel. The minute you put air into it, when you take, so this is choking it, nothing but fuel. Now we're letting a whole bunch of air into it, so that way the air can properly mix into the cylinder and start it up. Okay, so air filter mounted choke. Those are quite common with a few weed whackers. Other ones have a butterfly valve attached directly to the carburetor. Okay, next part. Okay, so we got the nuts off, and just so everybody knows, the nuts that came off are 5/16. Okay? We're gonna just slightly wiggle it, and then pull it off, just like that, eh? Do not ever force anything off if it's not gonna come off. If she says no, no means no. Alright? As we can tell there, it's clean around the mouth, but the rest of it needs to be cleaned up a little bit, which is not a big deal. You know, one of the things I want to say is, with a weed whacker that is this dirty, it can get into the carburetor and gum the hell out of this up. I don't know if this carburetor has ever been cleaned before, but debris can get into the carburetor if nothing is tight. And when you looked at that air filter over there, it was dirty, so there's probably just a little bit of crap that is inside the carburetor, and we will look at that. Now we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna wiggle this nicely. There we go. See? Oh, there's the throttle cable right there that needs to be disconnected, but it's not a big deal. Not a big deal. Okay. Oh, you. Why don't you cooperate? Ooh, everything is like corroded crud crap. Fuck. If any of you bring a woman home to introduce to your mom, make sure she's a lot cleaner than this. Frick, you know, I'm gonna put this on pause. Alright, so after getting it off, I just want to point out to everybody, these two holes are very important. One of them works, one of them does not. It would be this one here. They connect with the two holes that are at the bottom or at the top. Your weed whacker might be different. Your hole might be here, 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 or anywhere, but there needs to be a hole from one side of the carburetor which matches with this side. Anytime that you have a gasket right there with one hole, and it looks like it's even, or it doesn't look like this, like another brand of weed whacker, that hole on the gasket could be placed wrongly, upside down, backwards, whatever. It's blocking the hole. You've got the carburetor on, right? But that hole on the gasket is wrong, and you're just fighting with it. It's airflow, it's the exit from the piston coming out. Okay, so on one side only will you see those holes, but not the other. On this side, it does not need it. So you have no choice but to get this right. When you take these two surfaces off, be mindful of this gasket. That gasket could rip off depending on the material that was used to put them on. Manufacturer made them, but this one came off nicely and it didn't rip. So therefore, if I had to replace this because it did rip, then I would have to use that material right there, which is not a big deal because I have done that before and it did work. So the carburetor will always be attached to a throttle cable, will always be attached to the fuel lines. These fuel lines are attached there, and we need to disconnect these in order to free up the carburetor. When you do that, put it on a towel, something like this, because fuel will leak out of these holes because of the pressure. Take the lid here, uncap it, unscrew it just a little bit, just to let the air in, so that way when you do take these off, the fuel will flow back into the tank. If you don't remove this, fuel will come out of here and be all over the place, and we don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to disconnect the carburetor from the line and the fuel lines, and then we'll look at some more things. Before I go any further, I want everybody to know something very specific. Pay attention to these fuel lines. One goes to a fuel filter inside the gas tank, and the other is a return. When you have a primer bulb, you're dealing with a return of fuel back into the fuel tank. So you press the primer bulb. Fuel is leaving through this one here, going back into the fuel tank. When you release the primer bulb, it's sucking gas from the fuel tank into this here, going into the bottom. All right, pay attention to the position of these two fuel lines and any other lines that are in the fuel tank. Some fuel tanks have 1, 2, or 3 lines coming out of them, depending on the make, model, manufacturer of weed whacker. This one in particular has 2, and therefore we're going to pay a very close attention to that, and we'll show that. We'll have the tank completely taken right off, and we'll look at where these fuel lines are. Anytime that you are going to do what I just did by taking out the carburetor, you should pinch off the fuel lines, so that way there is no fuel leaking from these if there's any fuel in there, and there is. And there is. When we take this off and we look inside, it's right full. Oh my gosh. Now I gotta dispose of that fuel. And the reason why I gotta dispose of that fuel is because I don't know if it's contaminated. I don't know what kind of fuel that he used. Maybe he did use 50-to-1. Maybe he used something else to 1 and in a different ratio, a different type of oil, different type of gas. And we'll talk about the fuel issues later, but if you're going to mess with the fuel lines, pinch them off, and this is what I use to pinch them off. After getting the carburetor off, now I need to disconnect the on-off switch. So once again, there's 2 leads here going into the magneto. Pay attention to which one goes where. The white striped one is on this side, the straight black one is on this side. Okay? Once we got this disconnected, then we can remove the shaft from the body. And the way that we do that is we attack one nut there and one on the bottom. This bolt clamps onto the shaft, holding it in place, and this one screws directly into the shaft, preventing it from twisting. Okay? And I will show you which one is which once I get them out. Okay, so now the engine is separated from the shaft. Now, I just want everybody to know, you didn't need to do all this to take the shaft off. You could have just undone those 2 right there to take us off. But now this can be put aside. But what I want to do is I want to show everybody that nut and the bolt that I was just talking about there, right here. So this is the screw which went into this side, right there. And this is the bolt which went into the bottom. Now, remember me saying that coarse threads are going to be used to secure 2 plastic pieces together, and a bolt would be attached to the engine? Well, this one is in the bottom because of that nut, which you see on the other, that brass right there, the fine thread. So the manufacturer designed it to be that way. Okay, this is only being used as a pin, which gets inserted into that hole right there. So it's not attaching to this, it is being used as a pin to go inside that hole to prevent it from twisting. This bolt only acts as a clamp to grab it firmly. Okay, and you see a slot right there, a slot, and yeah, that's what that purpose is to grab this. Okay, having said all that, I'm going to put that aside and we're going to get this set up properly. We got the engine off. We got our parts and our pieces, all the nuts and the bolts, the carburetor. We got my hand washing rag. We got my face washing rag. We got all the other rags there to wipe off all the parts that are dirty. And the head is right there. So let's look at the next order of business. And that is this part here. Okay, so to take this off, we're going to take this off. This has to do with the channel, the throttle channel, which comes out from the throttle cable that we pull to make the carburetor go round. So that comes off, and then this comes off. Remember me talking about these two right here? These two are long and are attached to the back of this, which I would normally expect. In order to take that off, we use, like, once again, star bit, P25, and then take it out. Take it out carefully. Okay, don't rip anything apart. Don't tear any gaskets or bend any metal. And pay attention to it. Once we get this off, this gasket right here will come off, and you know what? There's a very good possibility this could rip. There's a very good possibility you will have to replace this. Try not to do that. Don't just yank everything out like that, okay? Like you're just softly, slowly ease everything out and just pull it, okay? And then once we get those off, then we're gonna work on the muffler, okay? The muffler, we'll take this off, and theoretically, we get this side off. We get this side off. We now have access to the cylinder. We'll take the spark plug out, okay? So we can look at the cylinder piston through this way. We can look at the cylinder piston through this way. We can look at the top of the cylinder from up here, okay? And then we can find out what it looks like. What it looks like, the top of the piston, is there corroded crap onto there? Is there scoring and scratching on this side? Is there scoring and scratching on this side? And we'll look at that because the guy was talking about compression. And now that I think about it, we can do a compression test. This would be the perfect time to do a compression test. We're gonna take off the spark plug. Let me look at my arsenal here. Here we go. Compression checker. And we can still do a compression test by putting one end onto there. Okay, so we'll take this off and we'll do a compression check right now. Okay, so I'm gonna give this a few pulls. I'm gonna give this 10 pulls, and then we're gonna watch this. I'm gonna do a separate video so that way this can be right side up when I'm doing the video. So here we go. Okay, look at that. So that shows me that we have about 120 psi, just a little over 120 psi, and it's not losing any air. There's no air, the needle is not going down, so therefore this is a good compression engine. So that will be dispelled for the customer. Okay, so we're about to take this off. That bolt there is a fine thread, and remember, it attaches to the block. It came out of that top one there, and that bottom one there is loose. We did not take out that one or that one because they are attached. It was all one piece. And after doing that, it comes off, woo, just like that, okay? So let's look. Let's take this out. And we'll put it right there. Notice one side's got a washer, that's because it's stuck in there, okay? Pay attention to the washers and bits and pieces, because it could look like that if you turn it upside down. Dirty, grungy, gross, yuck. Well, look at that. This gasket here is in good condition. It's just dirty on the outside, but on the inside, it is clean. Pay attention to holes, like I was talking about. You see that bottom hole right there? It looks nice and clean, as well as the big hole. That top hole has nothing to do with anything. Certain models of weed whackers have a channel. There's a little channel that goes around this, okay? So if your hole is offset on your carburetor, and the hole is somewhere on the carburetor here, that channel will pick that air up still and line up with this one. Okay, so don't worry about that, but make sure you match all the original components to where they're supposed to be. So this now goes onto there and goes into my little container that I use for when I have chips and dips at home and I watch a movie. I save the containers so that I can put them all into there. And for those of you wondering, why do you put everything all in one container? I could never do that because I don't know where they would go. But because I have done this literally dozens of times before, I can just sort of pick one out, put it back into the part. Pick one out, put it back into the part. Pick one out, put it back into the part. Okay? I've done this lots before. So we're just going to put this aside, right over to there. Okay, and then we can now look at the cylinder from this side. Ooh, the cylinder. Wow, that is a cylinder right there. You see directly in the middle. Wow, looks like a brand spanking new cylinder. So we're gonna give this a little bit pull to make it go up and down. That's the bottom. Very nice. I can sort of see the inside of the wall from the light going around, and the inside of the wall shows me that there's nothing wrong with the inside. So we're going down on the piston now. There's no scoring, no lines, no nothing. Oh, look at that. There's no browning, heavy browning, which I would normally see on top of a piston. This is good. Let's go back up. Okay, so if we want to see more of the top of the piston, then that's why we take off the muffler. So the port on here is lower than the port on the exhaust. The exhaust port is higher than the port on the carburetor. Okay, if you want to see more of the top of the piston, take off the muffler and look at it through this side. We can also look at it through the top of this hole here if we could. Certain models of weed whackers you can look directly right down. On this one here, no, we can't because we can. So I don't know if we can. I think this is up as far as it can go. I can't see. I need a light. But you know what? That's good. So I'm gonna take the muffler off now. When we're taking off the muffler, those 4 bolts came out of those 4 holes, and certain cases they could be fried, stuck in there. The important thing to do is to torque them off by hand and not use a hammer drill. Okay, so this comes off nice and easy, just like that. Look at that. Carefully put it right there. Let's look at it. Ooh. Okay, that's expected to look like that. These are parts that are exposed to high heat, which it would be normal for them to look burnt and corroded. Okay, now there's 2 bolts on both sides of those. I don't think you can see them. There's one right there. There's one right there. There's one right there. And they come off like this. So once I get those 2 off, then this can come off easily, nicely, slowly. Okay, so those 2 bolts were found inside of there. And remember, torque them off by hand. Don't use a friggin' drill. They're fine threads, so they're attached to the block. Okay? And these ones are fine threads too, but they're attached to the muffler. Okay, anytime that we're dealing with fine threads, they attach to metal. So now we can just wiggle this off loosely, slowly. If you need to use a little pressure, go ahead, but make sure you don't rip that gasket, whatever you do. It's just a little bit stuck coming out, but that's fine. Oh my gosh, I don't want to wreck it. Okay, I gotta put my phone down. Okay, everybody, it was hide and seek game. There is a nut right there. There's a net right there. I could not see it because of all the freaking dirt and debris that was covering it. Okay, but I had to look really hard. If you can't really see it yourself there with my camera, but maybe you could. But yeah, once we get that out, then that stupid muffler can come out. Okay, so to get that muffler off, one bolt there, and one right there. Okay, that bolt is right here. Is that bolt the same as the other two? Chances are, no, it's just a little bit shorter. Anytime that you have different size of bolts, draw a picture, take a picture, do something to differentiate. This one goes there, these two go there, those four attached to that, okay? Draw a picture, make a mental note, do whatever it is. But don't get them confused because you could strip the threads and they might not even be the same threads. So therefore, this part here came off nicely. This is just a barrier, but the heat shield between the cylinder and the muffler, so parts don't get too hot and fry this. That's what this is for, to prevent this from getting really hot, melting. Now we're going to look at the condition of this, and we're going to see that, yeah, it needs to be cleaned up a whole lot of burnt carbonation happened there. Good and young. We'll take those, and we'll put them right there. And now we can look at the cylinder through this part. And once again, on this side, looks like a brand new piston. But now we can see the top of the, right there. See that? We couldn't see that before, could we? But now we can. Looks like there's a bit of crud on top of there, which is not a big deal. It's a whole bunch of crud on the mouth. Dirty little mouth. Wash your mouth, you dirty little girl. Would you kiss your dad with that mouth? Oh, man. Okay. So. The cylinder is good. He started it up for me the other day, which means the magneto is good, your spark. We just hit the primer bulb several times with the carburetor on. The fuel flow in this is good. And when you look at my area here, there's no leaks, which means there's no leaks into the gas tank. That is extremely good. Anyways, we have a very good unit. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to clean everything up. I'm going to take this off. I'm going to take the gas tank off. We're going to take the rewind off and look at that. And this part here and look at the clutch. We're going to take everything apart and look at it so you all know what to expect if you need to do something and take it apart, okay? What time is it? Time is 11:48. I'm getting hungry. I haven't eaten breakfast yet. I'm going to go to McDonald's. And then I'm going to come back here and start working on this. Okay, the magneto comes off with only 2 bolts. And one of them is right here. They are 2 of the same defined threads, T25, and they're skinny. Okay? These are easily distinguishable when you take them out. You can put them back in. You don't necessarily have to put them into there, but these can be put right there and left. Right? Be mindful that there's a part here that attaches to this, which is meant for holding the wire for the on-off switch. So don't lose this. That can go to there. There's nothing wrong with this part here because he fired it up for me last night. Well, we will clean it up, make it look nice and pretty. We'll put that right there. Okay, now we're going to take off the gas tank. And the gas tank, I'm assuming, is held in by this. So let's look at this. Oh no. It probably is. There's a screw there. Okay. So we gotta take this off. And that screw in the front, right there. And then I think maybe this can slide out. So we're gonna try that. So in order to take this off, 225, take that, and that. Okay, so we got the two bottom bolts off, and those are two of the nuts. I'm gonna take this off carefully. What do you know? Look at that. Woo. Gas tank comes off nice and beautifully. Once again, dirty as hell. Holy fuck, it's dirty. But see those rubber things right there? This is what helps reduce the anti-vibration on the plastic parts here. Because these are plastics, plastic goes onto metal. Metal rubs against plastic, causes friction, causes heat, cracks and holes in the gas tank is not good. So that's why they use these. And here, it's not the first time that I've seen this. I've seen this in Ryobi's before too. This here is the rewind configuration. Okay, so when you look at that, that's the rewind. This is what it hooks up to. Okay. Now we're gonna look at taking the white body part off here, which comes off with that one there, and I think in that bottom one there, if you can see it, it looks like it. Yep, there's three of them. Here's 1, 2, 3, which takes off this here. So I just went to move this entire piece, and then I find out that there's a longer rubber mount right here too. So there's one in the front, two in the back. Doesn't that sound familiar? Okay, so now this gas tank is free. We're gonna set this to one side right there. We're gonna drain that and empty it. Now we're back to this. Okay, so once we got this off, these three bolts came out of there. Do you notice something about these three bolts? This one here sticks out. There's something on the threads right there. It looks like a spacer. That one came off of here on the bottom. Okay. All the other holes look different, except that one. That one's just a little bit bigger. If we were to put it in reverse, you would see that it goes directly right into there. Okay, so be mindful that that part could come out, just like all the other ones that look just like it. There's a metal spacer in there too. There's one in there too. This one came out. So be careful when you're taking things apart that these things can happen. Okay? They're the same ones, but that spacer came out from right there. All the other holes have one too. So once we're done doing that, then we have here the clutch. This here is the clutch, like your wheel and on your vehicle. The shaft goes into there, a square attaches into there, and it spins this. Actually, it's the other way around. This is the motor. We've got this right down to its bare bone components now. So when the motor is running, this is spinning. When this spins, these two pieces spread out. They open wide, they open up. And they go back down when you're idling. So you're hitting the gas, making the engine rev, it's spinning, and as it's spinning, it's opening up. These two surfaces here, when it's spinning, grab on the inside of this clutch. And it grabs it like a brake shoe, and it makes it go around. Okay, that motion attaches to the shaft, goes all the way to the head, and makes the head on the mower spin. Okay, so therefore, we gotta look at these surfaces here, make sure that there's nothing on there that's gonna cause any abrasions to the inside of here. As you can tell, this is nice and shiny. It looks like a mirror. Okay, there can be no debris on these surfaces here, so we're gonna make sure they're absolutely clean. And we gotta make sure this is nice and clean too, and it does look like it is. You can take these out if you wanted to. what you got to do is you got to see those holes in the bottom there. Let's see here. Yeah. Oh no. You gotta secure this. So take a screwdriver or something, jam it into there, prevent this from coming out, and then turn this way. Okay, and then this part can come out and you can analyze it and you can replace those two pieces, and then you can have access to take out the flywheel. There's no real need for me to take off this flywheel or this part here after looking at everything. So what we're going to do is just clean everything up. So this is done. We're going to clean everything up now. Give me a minute. Alright. So the engine is somewhat completely stripped. If you wanted to access the piston, then you need to know this part comes off first, and then these two parts come off, okay? So you need a very strong T30 bit. Now you're going to need two. One's right there and one's right there. There is a gasket between this surface and this surface, so you got to make sure that you don't rip that off, destroy it. And if you did have any leaks, it would be that gasket. If there was any leaks, it's probably because you didn't put it on properly. There's probably going to be Loctite on those threads, so be sure of that. Don't take this off with a friggin' hammer drill. Holy shit, don't do that. Take it off by hand and grip it hard, and disassemble it on this side. Because we have to take out the flywheel and this part to get this part off, we can see, if we were to look on the other side, where those bolts are. There's one right there at the end of my tip. Oh, you know what, let me get a screwdriver here. There is a bolt on the other side right there. There's a bolt on the other side right there. There's a bolt on the other side right there. So 1, 2, 3, and I'm pretty sure they're the same as these ones here. You access those 3 bolts on this side. You got to do exactly what it is that I told you to do. Jam something in there to prevent this from moving. Spin this in a counterclockwise and it will come loose. Then give this a few gentle taps, like with a screwdriver. Go tap, tap, tap. Don't bang the hell out of it, because this is either aluminum or steel or lightweight steel, and you could jam the parts in there, and it'll, if you put it together, when you really bang on it, then it'll start to warp, and then you'll have really bad vibrations. Once you get that flywheel off, then you can access those bolts, and you can sort of see one right there. There's a bolt right there. You can't, it's not focusing on it. There's also one right there on the bottom. You can sort of see that. Okay, now those surfaces have a gasket, and there's a gasket right there. So when you take these two off, make sure you don't rip that at all, and clean everything out if you want to. But when it comes to cleaning up, I want to show everybody what it is that I use. These 3 products. WD-40 will get off the tough grease that's on right there. Brake cleaner will help get into the areas where I cannot get into and clean that out. Easy off oven cleaner works best on the muffler parts because it will dissolve all the corroded crap that is on there. It will work exactly the same as your oven. And an oven cleaner is the absolute best. I use 2 brushes here and a whole load of rags and some paper towel. So from this point on, we're going to clean everything up. Once we get everything all cleaned up, we're going to analyze the gas tank, and then we're going to analyze the carburetor. A lot of you are really going to wonder about the carburetor, but before I get to that part, we're going to clean everything up now. So that's that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the carburetor and the gas tank. So let's start off with the gas tank. I cleaned it up all around. You still see that there's still some gunk and stuff. That's fine. I can do a finer job later, but I just wanted to get the basics of it done. Because of the fact that this thing was full of fuel, and after I cleaned it up, I found that there is 0 leaks in the gas tank. So we don't need to do a water pressure test or a water leak test or anything. That hole there is what it looks like underneath this little flap. And that is what the gas tank goes through. This is what it is, okay? And all that this does is just creates a seal between the plastic of the gas, and it just snaps right in there. Just creates a tight seal, airtight seal, liquid type seal for the fuel. So that way when it comes out of the hole, it doesn't leak. I can't do 2 things with one hand, but that hole is the return. This is the return. So when you press the primer bulb, the cycle fuels, goes in through the bottom, comes out the top. When you press down, the fuel comes out of this knob here, and it goes back into the fuel tank through this tube and right into this port. Okay, now when it comes into the bottom, it comes out of this tube, and it right in there is a fuel filter. You can't really see it. There's a fuel filter right in the bottom, and that connects to the bottom of the carburetor, this one here. Okay, so fuel goes into here, fuel goes out, in, out, in, out. Okay, it cycles. Now I want to explain something very carefully to you guys. When it comes to the sizes of the holes on certain weed whackers, you're not going to see this. These holes would be smaller. One is smaller than the other. One is either 4 millimeters, the other is 4.5 or 5 millimeters. Okay, if they're small holes, they're never equal the same size. Sometimes in certain cases, those holes are the same size. They'll be both 4 millimeters or 4.5 or 5 millimeters. Now, the sizes of those holes are directly related to the sizes of these knobs here. Okay, this one would be normally the bigger tubing that would attach to this, and this would be the smaller tubing. And when you look at these two together, the tubing, you can see that they're pretty much the same size. So I guess it would be safe to say that because of the elasticity of the rubber tubing, it would go over those 2 ports equally. Okay? Now, under normal circumstances, this one will always be bigger than this one. And sometimes they're not curved out like that. They got a little bend in there, a little elbow, a little 90 degree here, a little elbow here. Sometimes they just stick directly right out of the carburetor like that, and another one right below it. Okay, so in this case, because we're working on a Stihl weed whacker, I would expect that this be a Stihl carburetor, but it's not. It's a Walbro. So I would say that this is either, well, if it's got a name on it here, that means this is an original carburetor. If there is no name and there is no markings, like you would see right there, if there's no stamped markings that says the brand name, the numbers, the lower jet or the high jet, then that means it would be a Chinese knockoff, which would still work. But an original carburetor would work just a little bit better, like it's supposed to. So now that we're done with the gas tank, we'll put that together later. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the carburetor. It says right there, Japan. This is the end that is facing the cylinder because of those 2 holes, remember? Okay, turning it around. The Walbro markings are right there. And if we turn it around, we'll see it's WT227FM4. And if we keep turning it around, this is the part that is closest, that is attached to the air filter. This is the high and the low jet. This is the idle jet. We have another jet, which is right here. I don't exactly know what that is. I've never seen it before, but you know what? I don't want to mess with it. but I would assume it would have something to do with one of the ports. There's little tiny holes that are in there, and we will examine those holes when we get this carburetor apart perfectly. Now, because of the fact that the carburetor was drinking properly when we first tested it out, there's a very good possibility that everything is a tight connection, and all that would probably be needed would be just an adjustment of the carburetor jets. But what we're going to do, just so you all know, we're going to find out which parts need to go into the carburetor for this style weed whacker. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take this apart completely, and we're going to analyze the parts. Okay, carburetor time. This carburetor is now fully disassembled. This here's the diaphragm. It needs to be replaced. Star side is always facing the carburetor. And after taking this off, it's stuck on there. Some manufacturers use glue to put this on, which is not a big deal, but the reason why they do that is to create a nice airtight seal around this so that way no air escapes, so that way this functions properly. Okay, that star shape that is right there, that is going up and down and pressing on this button right here. Okay, that is how that works. Let's turn it around. We got some ports here. We've got some fuel that comes in and goes out. So right there is a screen where the fuel goes in from this port here. Now, that has to do with these diaphragms and these ports right here. That's the flap for one of the holes over there. Okay, now this part here is replaceable. All I have to do is just go into my arsenal, pull out one that matches the picture for how it looks. Just flip the lid, take the package, put it right there, close this, put it back into my arsenal, close the lid, forget about it, and there we go. All the parts that are in here can now be put back into this. So let's forget about that for a minute. What I want to show everybody is something extremely important, and that is the jets, the needle jets, where they are, how long they are, and blah 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 blah. So, okay, these two jets go into there. This one is the high, this one is the low. It goes into the corresponding holes. Now, let me do an overhead view of the length of them. You know, let's take the spring out. Spring is out. Spring is out. You're going to notice that one is longer than the other by just a little bit. This is the low jet, and this is the high jet. Okay. Now, if you get these two backwards, when you're putting them back into the carburetor, you're going to have a very bad day adjusting your carburetor. Because just because they look like they will work, they won't. And it has to do with the length of the shaft right here and the shaft there. Okay, so this surface right here stops the needle from going in, just like the surface right here, and it's just a little bit longer. And the needle tips are just a little bit finer too. So, you know what? What you could do, if you mix them up, don't, but take a picture, make a note, compare them with a ruler or whatever. But what you could also do is take a screwdriver or a toothpick, preferably a wooden toothpick, just insert it lightly into the hole, make it stop, take a mental note of where it stops on that screwdriver, mark it with a pen or whatever, take it out, put it back into the other hole, and compare the distances. As you can see, this one is a little bit shorter than the other one. So this one is the long one, this one is the short one. Okay, do not force anything in there that is metal, and that will tell you where exactly these two go into in case you screwed up and you forgot, okay? Not all weed whackers are the same, and so therefore certain needles are the same size. Sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes this one is longer than this one. It totally depends on the manufacturer, okay? So be very careful not to mix these two up when you're putting them in there. And don't mix a Stihl with a weed whacker, with a Husqvarna, with an Echo. They're all different threads, all different sizes. Not all of them are the same. Are going to work properly. Okay? So I'm going to clean this up with brake cleaner and a straw and an air hose. This little red hose is perfect for getting in all those ports and watching where the fuel flows, okay? Now, when we look at the this part here with the primer bulb on it, you can see that there's dirt that is at the ports. That dirt buildup can interfere with the usage, the proper function of the fuel flow. So therefore, we're going to clean everything and just put the brand new parts back into the carburetor. That's it. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to put these new parts onto the carburetor. So we're starting with this one. Of course, we got to put together the components that go into there, which is in this pile here. Okay, so let me work on that real quick. All right, now when it comes to this, you got to make sure that the holes line up. And you see those two holes on the either side of there? Well, those are pinholes, and they fit into there. Okay, just like that. Okay, there's no wrong way to put it. So then you put this one. Star side is down, and that goes onto there. Okay. Now, for those of you that are wondering, why can't you put the gasket on top of the diaphragm in order for that to go up and down? And that's just because the diaphragm creates the distance needed for that knob on the other side, between the knob and the tab, for it to go up and down. Okay? Right now, there is just a little bit of a gap between the knob and that tab that you see in which the valve. So let's take this apart. Let's look at it. This is the part that is touching this right there, and that is going up and down, opening the valve, opening the needle valve on the carburetor. That's how it works, okay? Right under this little crevice here is a spring which pushes up. Okay, that opens up to let the fuel in for the rest of the carburetor. Therefore, this goes onto there, and then this goes on. But I want to let everybody know something. You see this piece here? It's dry. And I use something to create an airtight seal. So, on the side of the gasket, you got a little bit of distance there, like 1/2 millimeter. That 1/2 millimeter all the way around is just enough for air to get in and create bubbles, which would create a loss of pressure and a loss of proper tuning for your carburetor. Now, what I do, and only I do, is I take a Q-tip and I dip it into some heavy-duty grease. Right there on the cap, I just put some on there, and then I coat it on both sides of this gasket. And what that does is it creates a nice tight seal, and it gets rid of any other air pockets that could escape during the installation of the gaskets, the carburetor, and it has worked for me. You know, you might want to use something else. You might want to use glue, rubber cement, or whatever. Do whatever it takes to reduce the air gap, the air getting into the carburetor when you're putting everything together. That is the point. Okay, now let's ignore that. Let's put this to the side. Let's flip it over. Okay, now we have this surface here. Make sure that all the holes line up with what you're going to put on. In this particular case, the diaphragm goes on top of here because of those flaps. Okay, so when you put this on, make sure that the holes line up. And in this case, yes, it does. So why do we do it this way? Just because of those holes. That one right there and that one right there. You see this here? Underneath this here is a hole. Underneath here is a hole. Let's look at that. See that? Okay, so fuel comes from under this flap, comes out and into that hole. The same thing with this one. Fuel comes from under this flap and into that hole. It cannot be reversed. Fuel cannot come out of this hole and into this one because of this flap. It's a one-way valve. This is a one-way valve on the carburetors. Okay, so what this gasket does, this one here, it creates a tight seal, pressing that against, this gasket presses against the diaphragm, against the body. Now this gasket too needs to have an airtight seal, and you will need to take your Q-tip, put both sides of this, and then seal it down with the regular top of this, and it goes right onto there. And there's pins. Those pins correspond with the holes onto there, so that way everything lines up correctly. Okay? Even when you flip this over, those two pins right there correspond to these two holes right there on the top, and that goes on there just like that. All right, so be mindful of the holes and the pins and everything that you're putting together, and make sure that it goes on exactly like I just showed you. You cannot do this backwards, because if you put the gasket first and then the diaphragm on top, you're going to have an air hole gap, this thickness of this gasket. So it has to be this way and no other way. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put everything together, and then we're going to do a drinking test. We're going to see if the carburetor drinks correctly like it's supposed to once everything is together. Yay! It's a brand new day, Sunday morning. All these parts have been cleaned, and now we're going to start putting together the engine. Carburetor is fixed. All the pieces in it have been replaced, and now we're just going to put it together. Piece by piece. This is it. We get the engine put together and put aside. Now what we're going to work on is the shaft and the head here. So we're going to start by taking off the guard, which is underneath by the same bolts that are on these here. If you take these two off, you can take the shaft right off the head. So I'm going to flip this over. Give me a minute. So having flipped this over, you're probably going to notice this. So take a steel wire brush and just scrub that out so you can access those holes a bit better. And then take the guard off. And then I want to show everybody something here before I go further. According to the manual that I read, this here is a grease port. This here is where you stick your grease in to grease the internal gears that are inside, which turn this head. Okay? Okay, so there's full bolts right there, which were pitting this steel plate against that. They were mounted right into here. Okay? So that's all that you need to do to take the guard off. Okay, these two bolts came off from the head right here. Alright? They're T27s, and this should technically be able to slip off. Can't really do two things with one hand. Oh, gosh. Okay, let me put my phone down. Okay, so we got the head off, and it was like on there very, very tight, so those screws that were holding these in, but then again, there was probably gunk and stuff in there that was like gluing it together. This is what the shaft looks like when it's clean. There's no other holes, which is acting like a pin on this. So technically it slides right on there. Now, if we were to look down the tube, this is what we would see. If you can see it. I don't think you can. You sort of can. It's not an empty tube. There's something inside the tube which holds the rod into place. And yes, I did say rod. This is what it is that is connecting the entire thing. It's a steel rod. That's what one side looks like. This is what the other side looks like. Okay? So we are going to grease and oil this. We're just going to put it aside right there. And now we're going to work on taking the head apart. Okay, so in order to take the head off, we put our thumbs into here onto these two, and then we lift them up. Just like that. That's what takes this head off. It's full of gunk and crap in there. Then we can pull this part out. We can just simply pull it out. It's not that simple. Here we go. We gotta twist it and turn it just to get it out. And there we go. Now we gotta stick a pin into this hole. And what I like to use is a hex key. So drop the hex key into there. Turn this until it locks. And it looks like it's locking right there. Okay, now we can twist this off. Just like that. I think it's righty tighty, lefty loosey. Yes, it is. Righty loosey. And there you go. That's how you take the head off. Now we can take out all the grass and the gunk that is in here. Make sure that you pay attention to all the washers and stuff that is connected. Okay, so pay attention to this side if there's anything stuck on the inside there. This is a washer. It comes off. All right. And then we have this part here. You know what? We could take this off, but we're not going to because of the ease at which it flows. And I can tell that it's been used and it needs to be greased. It sounds pretty dry in there. If you listen to it, it's dry. So what we're going to do is we're going to clean out the inside here, get rid of all the grease, clean this all up all around, clean everything up, and we're going to open this up, and we're going to put some grease into there. Okay? That might sound good enough for all of you, but no, that kind of needs grease because this head goes around, it creates heat, and it dries up everything that is on the inside here. So that's what we'll work on right now. Okay, all my parts here are cleaned, and all we need to do now is just take off this grease hole. This is a 1/2 inch wrench. Do not use a star bit because this part, which I just found out, could be on there like stuck. Okay, so this is the plug, the grease plug, and you put your grease into there. And if we were to look, I don't see any grease at all. Not like I expect you to see it through a cell phone, but when I'm looking at it myself, I cannot see anything. I want to let everybody know something. If you were so inclined to go and take this off, you need, this here is a washer which comes out spring, or not spring compressor, but a certain type of pliers which you use, compression pliers that squeeze together to pull that pin out, and then this can just lift right out. I don't exactly have that particular pliers. I do, but they spread open and they don't close. And I fought with them before to do this and it was a mess, so no need to do that. We're just going to leave it right here, but we are going to put grease into here because, as I said before, it sounds dry. Listen carefully. Shouldn't really be doing that. Okay, so it sounds like it's metal on metal, and it shouldn't be. So we're gonna put some grease into there. And if you're wondering which grease I'm gonna put, it'll be the same that I used on the carburetor parts. This on here. Okay, so let me work on that. Okay, so to put the grease in there, I'm using a homemade redneck situation. I went and took some of that, smeared it into there, and now we got about that much grease that we're going to pack in. So about 20 milliliters of grease that is going to go into that head, and we're going to inject it into there just like that. See that? Yeah. We're going to turn it a little bit, get it all worked up. And we're going to keep on doing that until this is completely done. Okay, so now comes the time where we're going to put in this rod. And I just noticed something about this rod when I looked down into the tube. If you can see markings on here, they look like they're rings. There's one there, there's one there, there's one there, one there, one there, and one there. They look like they're spaced out every 10 inches. What I'm assuming is that there's rings that are inside the shaft, which are just big enough to grab this. It's like some type of insert that is inside the shaft, which has an inner diameter hole big enough for this rod. And at this point right here is where they are. So if I was to grease it, there's no need for me to put grease right here, but just at this point. Now I'm going to have to do that at every other point, and as I do that, it's going to smear it itself, and it's going to be it's going to start from here. I'm going to go in all this way. All right. Now comes the time where we put the head shaft right back onto here. And when we do, because it's square, going into a square here, we might have to hit the rewind just to make those points line up, like from one corner to the other corner in here. After that, it should just slide in nicely. You shouldn't really have to fight with this too much. Make sure this part is nice and clean, and the inside here is clean as well. Okay? And then it should just slide in. You just gotta hit the rewind just to get this part into there. Okay, so we got the shaft completely put onto the weed whacker. We have next to put on the line, and we have next to put gasoline into the tank. What I want to do is I want to talk about something very important for those of you that may not know, which I have always known, which I want to share. When it comes to putting in or taking off your shaft, and you take this head off completely, and you disconnect this and you take this off completely, and now you have the shaft, right? When you go to put it in together, you're going to notice that there is an 1/8 of an inch variance between these two ends. So if you put this head onto the shaft very tight going this way, and then tighten these two, guess what? The 1/8 of an inch variance that you need will show up on this side, and this screw which goes into the shaft will be short about an 1/8 of an inch. So because this has a pin and this does not, what you do is you put this pin in first on this side. That screw goes directly right into the hole on this side, right at that point. Once you get that in and fastened on the bottom, then you put this side on tight onto there, and then screw those in. Okay, so this first, this second. That's only if you're going to take off both ends of the shaft. If you're going to take off this end only, it doesn't matter. If you're going to take off this end only, it doesn't matter. This only applies if you're taking off both of those like I just did. Okay, good. Okay, so I went and put gas in there, and we're going to press the primer bulb to see how the fuel is flowing. When you're doing this, it takes a few pumps to get it going, but then once you get it, the primer bulb should be filling up like it's doing right there, and you can see the flow from the bottom lines. Okay, so for those of you that want to know what the gas mixture is, it's all explained in this manual on page 30. It says it right there. I'll read it out to you. Your two-stroke engine requires a mixture of brand name gasoline and quality two-stroke engine oil with the classification TC. Use regular branded unleaded gasoline with a minimum octane number of 90 ROZ. But if you are in the USA, Canada, the pump octane is a minimum of 89. If the octane number of the regular grade gasoline in your area is lower, use premium unleaded fuel. Fuel with a lower octane number may result in pre-ignition, which is accompanied by an increase in engine temperature. This in turn increases the risk of piston seizure and damage to the engine. So what that means is you cannot use regular 87 on a Stihl weed whacker. On the next page it talks about the fuel. Use only Stihl two-stroke engine oil or equivalent branded two-stroke air-cooled engine oils mixed with classification TC for mixing. We recommend Stihl 50-1 two-stroke engine oil since it's specially formulated for use in Stihl engines. But it also says 25-1 with other branded two-stroke air-cooled engine oil. So if you can't find a Stihl oil, then you need to use another oil, and you have to mix 25-1. And this here gives you the readings for mixing. Now we're going to talk about adjusting the carburetor. So let me find that page. Okay, so this is the starting procedures on page 38. The following page, on page 39, tells you the settings for adjusting the carburetor. Page 39, we'll go through that. I've already read this, so this is what I will be doing when you see me tuning it up. And it goes into fine tuning. Now, what you all need to know is that because this is a line head, we are using a different setting. If you are going to use machines with metal cutting tool, you need to use a tachometer, and this is the specifications that you need to go. Because of the weight that is on the end of this will affect the engine performance. So every time that you change the head from one machine to another, you need to readjust the carburetor to get it to the speed that is designed for, that you can design that for. Okay, so having said that, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this to a location and we're going to start it, and you're going to watch me with the screwdriver, this one here at the back, tuning it up. Okay, so here we go. Now comes the part where we're going to fire it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use my balcony just to get it started to see if it will fire up. So we're going to put it into the start position. Start, stop, start. Okay, now I don't think we have to hit the trigger. The manual did not say that. We're going to hit the primer bulb. You're going to watch me do that. It's in choke position right here. And yeah, I'm just going to get this started to see if it will start. If it does, then I'm going to take it to a disclosed location, and then we're going to fine tune it. Okay? So let me get my phone set up here. Okay, that was awesome. So hold on, let me give a minute here. What we have here is a brand new carburetor. The old one, I replaced it. This is an original, but this one from Amazon, and it still works the same. I just want everybody to know, regardless if this is a FS76, the carburetor for this is the same as an FS38. The only difference is the bore and the compression stroke. Okay, so now we're going to go. You know what? In fact, I will talk about that later in another video. Right now, what we're going to do is take it to a location and test it out. Okay everybody, so that was a success. As you can see, during the video that you see in there, I had the captions as to what it is that I was doing. So you see me go like this. That was low. That was the low jet that I was adjusting. This was the high jet that I was adjusting. And this was the idle that you see me do. Okay? And I went down for pulling the screw out, and I went up, going up, right? So, or like screwing in. So, I shortened this video because there's some things that I did not show you guys, and that was the carburetor drinking. Normally I do a carburetor drinking, but this one here is the original, and The customer told me that he had a hard time getting it started and running constantly, even though he was able to start it for me, and even though I was able to press the primer bulb, and then it was working fine until I took it apart and then put it back together, and it didn't work like the way it was supposed to, and I didn't want to let you guys watch me fighting with the stupid carburetor for half an hour. So I deleted that. But the carburetor that's in there is a brand spanking new one that I got from Amazon, and luckily I have an arsenal of carburetors that I can get. And as a result of switching those carburetors and adjusting it on the video, I thought to myself, I'm going to make another video explaining the bore diameter, bore stroke on different weed eaters, because this one's a 76. I've worked on 38s before and a 55. So 3 different types of weed whackers. One's supposed to be more powerful than the other, and it has to do with both the carburetor and the bore stroke. I'll cover that in another video. Right now, that's about it. So thank you for watching, and I hope you like and subscribe and refer me to a friend. I live in Vancouver, Canada. I do weed whackers as like pretty much a lot. I also do other small engines like lawnmowers, blowers, generators, scooters, anything that you have that's a small engine under 100 cubic centimeters. So the customer is probably watching this. I hope you enjoyed that. It's now fully functional. Everything's clean on it, as you can see. Nice and spick and span everywhere. That grass that you see on there is what it is that I just cut. So I'll clean that off. It's not a big deal. So thank you, everybody. Sean Carlson from Blackjack 98 Enterprises in Vancouver, BC. Have a good day.